Welcome back. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are strapping on our virtual helmets and doing a deep dive into a place where the Earth is, well, it's literally tearing itself apart in real time.
We're talking about the Reykjanes Peninsula in Iceland.
Exactly. We've been analyzing a stack of really dramatic sources chronicling these intense sun-nuclear eruptions that started in late 2023. We're hoping to give you a complete picture of this geologic drama that's unfolding.
It's a truly dynamic environment. Our focus is on the Eldvarp-Svartsengi volcanic system, which is right near the evacuated town of Grindavik.
And these sources, they cover 9 separate eruptions since December 2023.
A staggering frequency, and we're going to show you how these events are all driven by this unrelenting power of 2 continents just pulling away from each other.
Our mission today is pretty simple. We want to connect the raw data, the seismic swarms, the uplift measurements, the lava barriers, to the foundational fact that this whole area sits right on the mid-Atlantic ridge.
The seam of the planet.
The visible seam between the North American and Eurasian plates. You're going to walk away from this understanding not just what happened, but why Iceland is suddenly entering this incredibly intense phase of activity.
And we really have to start with the precursors, because the buildup to this was just extraordinary. The whole crisis kicked off with an extreme seismic swarm on October 24, 2023.
And this wasn't minor trembling, was it?
No, not at all. It was a continuous, almost frantic vibration that was signaling a massive change happening underground.
Frantic is definitely the right word. I mean, by November 10th, that's barely 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
official figures showed over 20,000 separate earthquakes had been recorded.
20,000.
That kind of shaking, with the largest tremor hitting over magnitude 5.3, wasn't just pressure, it was the actual sound of a huge magmatic intrusion, a giant blade of molten rock forcing its way up into the crust.
And this leads us to the precise mechanism that we can now see governs this whole cycle beneath Svartsengi. The magma accumulates, roughly 4 to 5 kilometers down. And this buildup, it acts like a massive hydraulic jack, causing the ground above it to literally inflate or uplift.
And you can actually watch the land rise. We have specific measurements here that show just how fast this change was happening.
We do.
In the lead up to that first crisis, the land at Svartsengi went up by over 10 centimeters in just 16 days. That's astonishingly fast.
It is. And the inverse is just as dramatic. Once that pressure gets released, either in an eruption or a dike intrusion, that's when magma moves sideways underground. The land just rapidly subsides. It deflates.
And after that big November dike intrusion, the ground dropped by 35 centimeters.
Substantial amount, yeah.
35 centimeters. That's more than a foot of vertical displacement in a really short time. I mean, can you imagine standing there and knowing the ground under you is shifting that much?
That scale of movement is exactly what's feeding these successive rapid-fire eruptions.
And those 9 eruptions have just been relentless, haven't they? Each one adding to the toll on infrastructure and, people's lives.
Yeah. Let's look at the severity. That second eruption in January 2024 was truly devastating for Grindavik. The fissure opened less than 100 meters from people's homes.
Wow.
And the lava, it just quickly breached the anti-lava defenses they had just put up. 3 homes were destroyed.
And we can't forget the human cost. The ground movement itself was fatal before the lava even started flowing. Just before that January event, these huge, deep cracks opened up from the seismic chaos.
And tragically, 1 person was presumed dead after falling into one of them.
Just terrible.
The disruption just kept going. The third eruption in February, that one didn't just hit homes. It took out the crucial hot water pipeline from the Svartsengi power station.
Okay, I have to pause there. Why was that pipeline so exposed? Couldn't they have, rerouted a critical utility like that, especially after the first event?
It really just highlights the speed and unpredictability of it all. The magma's path is wide, it's unpredictable, and when the ground drops 35 centimeters, it just shears everything in its path.
Right.
And that break resulted in a multi-day loss of hot water across the entire peninsula. In an Icelandic winter, that's a major crisis. Heating, basic services, all gone.
And the capital region was spared.
Thankfully, yes. But it was a very sobering reminder of how vulnerable the country is.
And the volcano just kept ramping up the output.
Yeah.
The 6th eruption in August 2024, that one really stands out for its sheer volume.
It does. It released 61 million cubic meters of lava over almost 16 square kilometers. The initial flow rate hit up to 2,000 cubic meters per second.
It's hard to even picture that amount of lava.
That event really cemented the volatility, but then the seventh eruption in November 2024, it revealed a whole new and complex behavior. That's the one that famously engulfed the parking lot of the Blue Lagoon.
A huge symbolic loss.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting, geologically speaking.
Mm.
Our sources point out this critical discrepancy in that seventh event.
Mm-hmm.
The land uplift, the magma they measured accumulating, was only about 25 million cubic meters. But the eruption itself expelled a massive 49 million cubic meters of lava.
Nearly double.
Exactly. How does that happen? Where did the extra lava come from?
Well, that finding is crucial because it changes our whole understanding of the system's complexity.
Yeah.
It suggests that the lava for that eruption wasn't only coming from that shallow chamber beneath Svartsengi.
It was tapping into something deeper.
Exactly. A deeper, potentially much larger magma chamber. This means the system has more staying power, a higher volume potential than we first estimated. It makes timing future eruptions even harder.
That is a critical takeaway. It's not a simple plumbing system. And finally, the ninth event in July 2025. Not a huge infrastructure event, but it was notable for its gas output, right?
Yes, the pollution levels were much higher, and this is where we should quickly define what we're talking about. Volcanologists track SO2 sulfur dioxide. It's essentially the volcano's toxic breath.
And it's a key marker.
A very key marker. High SO2 often means magma is very close to the surface and it's starting to degas, sometimes violently. The fact that the pollution spread so far and was so high means the threat from the air is just as real as the threat from the lava.
We've seen the damage these forces cause. But to really get a handle on the relentless power here, we have to look at the engine driving it all. The fact that you, the listener, if you were there, would be standing directly on the seam of the planet.
That really is the extraordinary part. Iceland is the only place on Earth where the mid-Atlantic ridge, that vast underwater mountain range, rises above sea level. You're standing right on top of the spreading center.
We're talking about the North American plate and the Eurasian plate, literally pulling away from each other. And our sources state this happens at a rate of about 2.5 centimeters per year.
And that's the part that's hard to grasp. 2.5 centimeters, it sounds so slow, like your fingernails growing. So how does that tiny, slow movement translate into these sudden, massive, violent events?
That's the paradox of plate tectonics, isn't it? That 2.5 centimeters is just the average. The plates don't pull apart smoothly, they stick.
Right, they get locked up.
And they build up this massive amount of stored elastic energy, sometimes for decades or centuries. And when that stress finally overcomes the strength of the rock,
It ruptures, it snaps, releasing all that energy in one violent magmatic rush. That's your dike intrusion.
and because this geological engine is so powerful, the human defense response has been phenomenal to watch. Protecting the Svartsengi power station was paramount.
Of course, it provides essential heat and electricity to about 8% of Iceland's population.
They realized pretty quickly they couldn't stop the volcano, but they could try to redirect the lava. So they started building these massive earth barriers.
Basically man-made hills, yeah, designed to divert the lava flow. They started building in November 2023 and were almost done before the first eruption even happened in December.
That speed is incredible.
It's a continuous battle. The facility often operates remotely now, precisely because the system is so unstable. The control room staff, they've evacuated, engineers manage everything from a safe distance.
But as we discussed with that tragedy, the biggest risk to Grindavik itself, in the early stages, wasn't just the lava, it was the ground falling apart.
The town has been rendered almost uninhabitable by the cracks and faults that formed during that big 35-centimeter subsidence event in November 2023.
And that's where the timescales just collide, because many of the old buildings in Grindavik were built right on top of these old cracks.
They were, because those faults had been dormant for maybe 2,000 years. They were part of an ancient cycle of activity, much like the new Reykjanes fires we're seeing now.
So people just assume they were stable, but this new magmatic cycle is essentially just switch them back on.
Exactly. The pressure reactivated them violently. The largest crack, Stemfolska, is a chilling reminder of that. It's up to 3 meters wide and over 30 meters deep.
A canyon opening up in the middle of a town.
Essentially, yes. And that magma intrusion, that 15-kilometer-long blade of molten rock, it slices right through the crust, extending from Svartsengi towards Sunnuksgígar and then offshore past Grindavik.
And that vertical intrusion is the engine. Our sources show that since 2020, we've had 9 eruptions from these intrusions, but there have been 15 intrusions in total.
Right. So not every time the magma moves does it break the surface, but the pressure is constant, which suggests this isn't a random period of activity. It's structural.
It's a literal visible demonstration of continental drift. Which brings us to the incredible landmarks that illustrate all this.
Yeah.
Let's start with the most symbolic one, the bridge between continents.
It's a perfect photo op, for sure, but the geology underneath is profound. It's just a simple pedestrian bridge spanning a fissure, a crack created by the plates diverging. You can literally walk from the North American plate to the Eurasian plate in seconds.
It perfectly visualizes that slow 2.5 centimeter separation.
Mm-hmm.
It's humbling. Then, moving southwest, you hit the raw geothermal chaos of the Gunnever Hot Springs.
Gunnever's is world-class. It's a high-temperature geothermal area near Iceland's oldest lighthouse site. And it's not quiet. It's roaring. It's steaming. It has Iceland's single largest mud pool, just boiling furiously.
And the ground is all stained yellow and orange from the sulfur.
You're witnessing the Earth's internal heat escaping in this spectacular, very visceral way.
And of course, a place that dramatic has to have folklore. The site is named after Gunna, a ghost from the 17th century. The legend says she cursed her landlord over unpaid rent and was causing so much chaos that a local priest had to step in.
And this priest, he used a magical rope, or in some stories it's a ball of yarn with runes woven into it, and he managed to trick and bind Gunna's spirit forever into that churning, boiling mud pool.
It's just an incredible juxtaposition, isn't it? Trying to use magic and poetry to contain this raw, uncontrollable geothermal chaos.
Chaos that we now explain with, pressure release and hydrogen sulfide.
Exactly. Moving inland, we find the mysterious Kleifarvatn Lake, largest on the peninsula, one of the deepest, and it also sits directly on the mid-Atlantic ridge.
And this lake is unique. It's a geological anomaly. It has no visible rivers flowing in or out. It relies entirely on groundwater.
Which makes it incredibly vulnerable to the tectonic forces underneath it.
And we saw the terrifying result of that after the big earthquakes in 2000. A fissure opened on the lake bed, and 20% of the lake's volume just drained away.
And that revealed something totally unexpected on the new shoreline, didn't it?
It did. Cold War-era surveillance equipment, identified as Russian, was just found sitting on the newly exposed lake floor. The place is just layered in mystery.
Geological, historical, and legendary. Because it wouldn't be a mystery without a monster, right?
Of course not.
The lake is rumored to be inhabited by a whale-sized serpent-like creature. It's one of Iceland's two big cryptozoology legends.
It's always an attempt to personify that unpredictable geological power.
So we've taken this deep dive into the Reykjanes Peninsula. We've covered 9 eruptions, tectonic forces, engineering marvels, and ghosts bound by magical ropes. What are the key takeaways for you, the listener?
Well, the first is recognizing this continuous geological cycle. We're witnessing a rapid series of events, 9 eruptions and counting, all fed by magma accumulating deep down and then draining along that single 15-kilometer dike.
And the knowledge that the system is tapping a deeper source only increases the potential for bigger events in the future.
Exactly. And the second takeaway is just the direct visibility of continental drift. Whether it's crossing that bridge or seeing those huge cracks open up in Grindavik, you are watching the result of 2.5 centimeters of separation per year.
So what does all this mean in the bigger picture?
Volcanologists are strongly suggesting that the Reykjanes Peninsula has entered a long-term period of frequent eruptions. They're calling this the new Reykjanes fires.
A parallel to a similar destructive period back in the 13th century.
That's the idea. So this isn't just a brief event, it's potentially a century-long geological awakening.
That puts a powerful, kind of scary frame around this whole situation. Let's end by going back to that juxtaposition, ancient knowledge versus modern science. We talked about the chaos of Gunnever, where the only way to deal with it was for a priest to trap a ghost with a magical rope.
And we talked about the huge serpent-like monster rumored to be coiled beneath Kleifarvatn Lake. These were ancient attempts to explain these terrifyingly unpredictable forces.
And now we track these same forces with GPS satellites measuring ground lift by the millimeter, with drones mapping the dike, with SO2 meters predicting the next fissure. But knowing what we know now, that the North American and Eurasian plates are truly, physically tearing apart right under that lake, slowly rending the crust, does the ancient legend of a whale-sized monster lying coiled beneath the water make a terrifying kind of sense?
Something to think about the next time you look at a map of Iceland.